Imagine living in a world surrounded by the sounds of waves and birds, basking in the sun while attached to a rock when suddenly your world of peaceful solitude now consists of boat engine sounds, emergency vehicle sirens, loud music, and the not so relaxed stimulating sounds of construction. What happens when naturally low vibrational environments are introduced to varying sound frequencies that are not common in nature? Unfortunately, this has become a reality for many periwinkle snail populations that reside in intertidal areas near cities. In this video, we will be diving into the complicated world of the common periwinkle snail, Littorina littorea, that reside in the intertidal regions of Nova Scotia. Littorina littorea are highly resistant intertidal gastropods that are accustomed to changes in tidal levels, water temperature, and salinity, as well as changes in sediment type. Macroscopically, they have a sharp and pointed apex and are commonly found to have a range color patterns of brown, gray, or red. This study is working to investigate an important question in terms of the effects of human-invoked changes in the environment. How do varying sound frequencies influence periwinkle snail behavior in intertidal regions? This topic of research can help to clarify whether the exposure to differing sound frequencies that are common in intertidal areas that are located near a city cause a stress response or a change in behavior in these species of snails. This will also help to outline how certain activities may have more of an impact on this ecosystem than previously thought. Periwinkle snails are a crucial intertidal invertebrate species that affect green algae and barnacle populations that reside on the rocks and boulders of their environment. The Littorina littorea is involved in decreasing intertidal competition for space on rocky surfaces and play an important role as grazers. Marine gastropods detect sound through vibration sensing rather than hearing, like us. They are equipped with sensory systems like superficial receptors, internal statocysts, and flexible chorotonal appendages. These systems are concentrated in the head region and specifically use their ocular and olfactory tentacles as well as the mouth region. Benthic invertebrates that were under increased seismic sound exposure in a controlled lab environment tend to experience delayed developmental stages and coincidentally higher mortality rates due to improper larval development, although field studies performing the same experiment saw little to no decrease in development and mortality. Hypothesis. If a randomized group of periwinkle snail specimens are exposed to high-frequency sound, there will be an increased movement and sporadic behavior. Upon performing this experiment, I expected to see increased movement in the gastropods as the sound frequency increased. Experimental setup. The location chosen for the data collection was the sandy beach along the northwestern arm along Quimple Road. Materials that were used to take measurements and record data included calipers, transit lines, quadrats, sound-producing device, notebook, and a pen for taking notes. 3 quadrats were set up in the mid-intertidal region at a distance of 4 feet apart. For the generation of sound and delivery, sound was created from playing sound frequencies from my phone and pointing the speaker towards the left side of each quadrant. The sound frequencies I used were 50, 100, 200, and 400 hertz for between 60 seconds and 3 minutes. Snail groups that received exposure were randomly selected using a random number generator of 1 to 4 to determine which subquadrant will be chosen for close exposure. For data collection, pictures were taken before and after the sound exposure to measure any movement or orientation changes. A caliper was also used to measure general movement of the periwinkle snails. Images were analyzed to see if there was movement or change in orientation in the snails after the sound frequency exposure, as well as measuring the overall distance of movement using the caliper laid against the rocks. Results. After analyzing my results, I found that the most movement was invoked after a prolonged exposure to the highest frequency, which was 400 hertz. Looking at these images, we can see a significant difference in orientation of the shells and movement of these shells before and after the sound frequency exposure. The resistance to the lower frequencies could have been due to the result of the frequent exposure to boat engine humming and traffic driving by. The typical frequency of these vehicles ranges from 80 to 100 hertz, and these snail populations may have become more accustomed to these frequencies after frequent exposure. As the population has had little exposure to frequencies above 200 hertz, this gives reason for an increase in movement and change in behavior after a prolonged exposure to a higher frequency. Some limitations in the experimental setup was the timing of the experiment. The timing of the experiment occurred when in between low tide and high tide, and as I was finishing up the experiment and the sound frequency exposure, the tide started to come up, and I had to configure a new spot for one of the quadrants. Some future research topics include looking at the impact of higher sound frequencies on periwinkle snails in secluded sandy beaches to explore the full impact of how certain sound frequencies affect these snail populations.